First question is, what was school like when you were growing up?
Growing up in East Nashville, school
Mm.
was different. It was very diverse. You had white folks, black folks, and we had a huge Asian Pacific population. And so it was a walkable neighborhood where we rode bikes to school. We walked, we rode the bus, but we were surrounded by woods and parks, and so spent a lot of time like running through the woods.
What was the happiest memory from the days you were a child?
I think playing with my friends. I think working in education currently, and then reflecting my education experience, I realized that my mom and dad did a really good job to put me in an environment that was safe, that was welcoming, that was diverse. Again, one next door neighbor was a police officer. The other next door neighbor was an older retired white couple. On the end of our street was a Afghan refugee family who were coming in after the conflict with the war. And all around my neighborhood, we had friends who were different ages, different races, but having the woods and having a lot of land, we just did regular kid stuff like playing basketball, playing football, running, going to the farm that was in the back and terrorizing the farm or terrorizing the airport or knocking on doors and running. People call it
Think about
different things, right? But yeah, like it's a lot of good childhood memories that I have from that neighborhood.
that's good. Tell me about a time where you felt included or successful at your school.
I think my eighth grade year. Well, let me go back. Let me start with my fourth grade year. It was the first day of school. I was in Miss Pittman and Cole's class, and it was a dual class because Miss Pittman was pregnant and she was teeing up Miss Cole to lead the class during maternity. And I remember she did this program. She had like the star of the week. And I remember earning the star of the week, and I was so proud. And I was in fourth grade, and I got off the bus and I ran in the house to my mom and like just telling her like I was so excited that I was a star of the week and everything that included. But that also started my journey for my passion of reading. I was a class clown, and so any opportunity I could get to tell a joke or make people laugh, I was doing it. And I remember reading this book. It was Harriet Tubman, the Freedom something, and I was reading it, being funny. I was like, "Hi, my name is Harriet Tubman, and I am here to free the slaves." And what I thought was going to cause me to get in trouble, she took it as a positive and encouraged me to continue to read like that. And so I continued to read like that, and I fell in love. I had a passion for reading, like coming out of that class.
Since we had that, let's say, when's the time you felt unsafe or excluded in your school?
Um, a few times, and so the elementary school I went to, it was third grade through sixth grade here in Nashville. It was Dalewood Elementary. It was about a mile from our house, but we still were able to ride the bus. And even in my personal reflection, I remember every year from third grade to sixth grade getting suspended from school for fighting or behavior, having my mom come up and see what's going on, but also advocate for me. And I realized quickly in our school we had kids who lived in my neighborhood and kids who lived in low income. And I thought I was a tough kid, but I quickly realized in the fifth grade, I remember like thinking about this. The whole fifth grade class, they put what I would say and what my former classmates agree. It was they put all the misfits, all the behavior problems in one class, I guess as an experiment. And, things that we were doing in the fifth grade, talking about gangs, fighting, um, it was kind of wild to me. But when you're in the fifth grade and, you don't have your own friends who can take up for you, you kind of merge with the bullies. And so thinking like how cruel that was and like the conversation the teachers were having when they were picking students, it just makes me go back and think like, what was their idea? What was going to come out of that class where you had all the behavior of kids in one class? So that was a time that I wish I can go back in time and ask them, like, what were they thinking? And when I think about my classmates, a lot of them, most of them have gone to jail, been killed, and it just tells you like education is a journey, and it can go the right way or the wrong way.
What were your parents' hopes for you and your education? How did they talk to you about it?
I mean, and it's some of the things, but your granddaddy, my father, John Little Jr. was, I mean, he kind of raised himself. He was the first child of eight coming out of Mississippi. I forgot the city, but it's a small town in Mississippi. They migrated to Memphis, Tennessee, and started to build a family, but they lived in the projects, the housing projects. It used to be called Lemoyne Gardens. It's across from Lemoyne Owen College in Memphis. And his upbringing, you kind of see what manifested in his life. You probably didn't see it, but me reflecting on my father's life and how he met my mom and how they came about and they made me. I mean, yeah, your grandfather was in prison here in West Nashville. They since closed it. They called it was in a couple of movies called The Castle, but he would talk to me at times about how he escaped from prison. And, we have never had this conversation. And so, but he escaped from prison not by digging a hole, not by holding anyone hostage. He was so thoughtful that he planned how he would walk from each gate and get through the metal doors. And his plan worked, and he had a cab waiting out front who took him away from the prison. By the time they realized that he had escaped, he was long gone. And he went back home to Memphis, which is the first place you shouldn't go. And I remember reading in the newspapers when I was your age or younger that my grandmama had in the room, because I was just searching and reading stuff, that he was hiding in the floor when the marshals came in, and the first thing they did was start to look for him and beat up people in the house, mainly my Uncle Johnny and my aunties and my grandfather, grandfather Johnny. And what ended up happening, my dad's younger brother went to the back and got a gun and came around the corner and they shot him dead. I never got a chance to meet him. I just read it in the paper. The family never ever talked about it. The only reason I know the story is because I read the newspaper clippings. But I think it hurt my father. They didn't catch him that time. He still got away, but he ended up going back. And at about 1980, 81, he got out of jail. And I was born in 1983, and ironically, the school you attend now, those apartments across the street is where my mom, your grandmother, Dave and Don were living, and that's where my dad met my mom. So it's like full reflection when, your school moved to the Bailey building. I was like, oh, like this is close to my roots where I started.
Right. Looking back, what do you think people should know about desegregation, and what surprised you the most about desegregation at schools?
I mean, first, education is the difference in life or death. I think when you think about data, if you go back and look at data, how do people do who have a good education versus people who don't have a good education? And it tells a clear tale. It's no gray, it's black and white. And if you go to a good school, you have a very high chance of making it in life. And if you don't, very high chance that you won't. Poverty, prison, and, everything else in between. I think desegregation is a question, right? And so Brown versus Board of Education, there was a Supreme Court. Have you guys read about this in school?
Yes.
So that happened, right? I think it happened in the 50s, maybe 52 or 55. And although it became the law of the land, the federal government gave cities a lot of grace to institute desegregation. But at one point, 20 years down the road, they realized that a lot of cities still were not following through, and they started to really push cities to desegregate. So in Nashville, I want to say your Uncle Dave was born in 72. They started in the early 70s. And the reason civil rights activists wanted desegregation because it was separate but equal. It was like black folks go to one school and white folks go to one school, but the law of the land said that both schools should be equal. You should have the same books, the same high level of education. But it was a man, Thurgood Marshall. You know who he is?
Yes, we
Who
went over him a lot.
who is he?
He was. I remember reading about him, but I'm thinking of someone else right now. But
So
he was.
Thurgood was the first black Supreme Court justice, but where he made a name for himself, he was traveling around in South, Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, maybe, and with a video camera back in the 40s and the 50s, showing that the separate but equal law was unjust because it was not separate and equal. It was separate, and white folks had a lot in the good books, and black folks got all the hand-me-downs. And so he took his video evidence and his law background and started to advocate for desegregation. And so in Nashville in 1970, let's say 1972, our school system had 100,000 kids. Right now in 2023, our school system may be at 75, 80,000. And so in so many years, and over 30 years, like 50 years, our school system still hasn't rebounded from white flight. And so when you see schools like DCA, Donaldson Christian Academy, Franklin Road Academy, like those schools were created in response to desegregation, and they created their own schools. And so our school population still is lower than it was in 1972.
Is there a defining moment from your work towards education equality? A moment of. Wait, let me say that again. Is there a defining moment from your work towards education equity? A moment of memory that stands out the most?
I think it was a recent moment. It's the good, the bad, and the ugly. But November, I want to say it was November 2nd, 2020, being the first African American man to win the school board seat in District 4, Donaldson, Hermitage, Old Hickory, and not only to do it by myself, but to do it with my family, mainly you. Like that was a moment I would never forget, and it was a changing moment because usually when you do something that big and that momentous, like I want to go out and kick it and celebrate and pop champagne bottles, and I was like, oh, like it's time to get to work tomorrow. And so I just remember having a couple of drinks with close friends in the garage. We toasted, and then I went up and went to sleep and got up the next morning as a school board member, but really focused on changing the trajectory of our community.
I remember that night too. I remember making the quote, "Vote
Yeah.
little, make a big difference."
Vote little, make a big difference.
I remember looking. We were downstairs in the garage, like you said. I had my Coke with me because I can't drink,
Right.
and and it said John Little had won. And we were all really hyped. We were like, "Whoa!" It was pretty fun. Another question is, what legacies do you want to leave for your family or your community?
I think you'll understand this and how big I am. I remember my father telling me when I was a kid that I was going to name my first son John Henry Little the fourth, and how he helped me realize how proud it was to have a legacy. And so my biggest things, and I didn't told you this before, like no pressure because I think you already have everything that I have, but my biggest goal is for you to be better than me. And, I want to help you see the vision. I want to help you live the vision. I want to help you with the challenges that may come because I believe that's wisdom. Like maturity is not an age, right? Like just because someone is 60 doesn't mean they're mature. Just because you're 21 doesn't mean you're an adult. I believe, in my personal opinion, when you go through things, you learn things and you get wisdom that some people may not go through. And so my only legacy for you is to be successful, And how do I define success for you? I think it's the simple things like making sure you understand credit, right? Like you have good credit, you know how to invest, you have financial and physical resources that you can take to start your family. And then, like, you avoid some of the shortfalls that I had with gangs, getting expelled from school, being homeless, like running away from the law. I, I believe in God because I know there are some things that the reason why I shouldn't be here, why I shouldn't be living. And so my faith is rooted in knowing that someone was praying for me, someone was spiritually protecting me, and of course, physically protecting me. And so everything that you see me accomplish, like having a home, being married, having kids and being able to take care of them, investing, being a friend before you need a friend to others, knowing how to lead and be a leader, but also knowing how to follow. Like you don't got to be a leader every time. If there's a stronger leader, it's about like how do we accomplish the goal. And so I want you to avoid my pitfalls, but I also want you to maximize the things that I've done really well in. And with that, like I can go to sleep a happy man, knowing that you are better than me. And anything that I got is already yours. And so you already got one step ahead.
How does your desegregation experience shape who you are today?
I think racism, is a tall, 6'4", very dark black man. I've learned to code switch. I have learned that in a good education like saves lives. Like I remember going to my high school class reunion, and although I was expelled from school, my classmates still accepted me. And not only did they accept me, they let me lead the reunion charge. Like I gave the keynote. And I thought that was so dope, and we had it at our school. But returning to a school that I was walked out in cuffs, right? And when I think about Stratford, one thing that I loved was it was so diverse. Like you had black folks, you had white folks, you had the Asian Pacificers, but you also demographically, you had wealthier folks and you had middle class and you had poor folks. And so that shaped me, right? And so I thought everybody had that experience. But what I quickly realized working in education that desegregation kind of decimated our communities. Um, Going back to the statement I always make, when you look at black, brown, and poor white communities, like 999 times out of 1,000, the school is low performing, maybe even, the bottom 5%. And so I had the opportunity to ask civil rights activists, knowing what you know now, would you have fought for desegregation? And one guy who I respect, his name was Kwame Lillard. He passed away about 3 years ago in 2020, maybe 2021. And he said no. And I said, explain that. He said we should have fought for equality and equity, but keeping the fabric of our own community. And so everybody's welcome, but I think he realized destroying what made, like it used to be in your neighborhood, your teachers lived, you went to the market and they always say it takes a village. I think the desegregation tore that village away, and it wasn't intentional of keeping a semblance of it. And so, as I get older, I think the younger generation, your age, younger people, like they don't have respect for elders, but I mean, poverty kills. And so when parents are just focused on working to keep a house over your head, to keep you safe from harm, to make sure you eat, education becomes second and third on the priority list. But education is the key to success in America. So then you start to realize why our communities suck.
For our last question, I'd like to say, is there something that you've always wanted to know about me, but you never asked?
Mm, I think it's a question that continues to be asked because it helps with your guidance. Like, how do we best support your growth, like your academic growth, your physical, your spiritual growth? Like, you know, I can't read minds. I don't want to be awkward, but in a perfect world, we would communicate more about how do I best support your leadership and your transition to becoming a man. In 4 years, I mean, you'll be getting ready to graduate high school, going to college, like having your own dorm, having a roommate, maybe working a job. So, it's 4 years will be here faster than we know it. And so I just want to be there with my quest to make sure that you're better than me. I think I just want to make sure I give you the tools or connect you to people who got the tools that can support you.
The way you could best support me is, doing what you're already doing now, like putting me in a good position to grow, like helping me get into NBA, sports, all of that. I feel like all of that's helped me in general. And so just doing what we're doing now that's enough right now.
Okay, cool. The awkward moments. Yeah.
So I have follow-up questions on your story, but I also want to hear a little bit more from you. I guess, so my first question is, I really loved the vision of you reading theatrically about Harriet Tubman in
Yes.
class. And so you started to talk about this a little bit, but can you tell me about the journey from star student in fourth grade to detention in fifth grade to, I believe you said walking out in cuffs in high school, and how did the school environment perhaps contribute to that path?
So I also wrote a journal. Miss Pittman, I mean, she's fourth grade. She was amazing because she used to make us write a one-page journal each day. And, I remember one day like writing angry words to her, not thinking she was going to read it. And her feedback was like, I understand that you're angry and it's okay to be angry. And I was so shocked. But I think I had anger issues. My dad wasn't around a lot because he was a road warrior. He was a hustler. Maybe maybe even a pimp. I never got a chance to find out. He passed away last year. But I just think my mom, I go back and I think about my mom, right? She lost her mom when she was 12 years old to breast cancer. My mom had her first child, my oldest brother David, at 16. We lost our mom to breast cancer when I was 16, 17. And so not having my dad around, my mom getting sick, she put us in a bed. The neighborhood saved our lives, but I think I was still an angry child. I had anger issues. And so my brother was 12 years older than me, and he used to terrorize me. I mean, maybe it was me sneaking in his room and taking his gun or taking weed or illegal drugs or, playing with his gun, and he would find out and beat the crap out of me, or waking up one morning after I was sleeping on the couch and hearing a shotgun cock and then opening my eyes, and my brother had the shotgun in my face and saying, if you ever talk to my mama again like that, I'm gonna blow your head off. And me just doing this, just shaking my head because that's the only thing I can do. And not being able to take that anger and that energy anywhere but school. And so I was a menace to society. My mom recommended that I have a behavioral counselor who would come and meet with me, twice a month to like help me talk about my feelings and what I was going through. And she taught me how to count to 10. to like relieve some of my stress. But those things helped, but I was still, I mean, I was an adventurous child. And so I was a child breaking into people's homes, not to steal anything, but to take food, right? Like, I just look back and say, wow, like, I wasn't stealing things or taking somebody's boat, crossing the river and breaking into cars and Opry Mills, not breaking windows, but if the door was open, like, I'm going in the car. And I don't know why I'm doing it. Or we're eating at the restaurant and then we don't have any money. And so I'm running. I think just the anger and no real guidance because my mom had to work 12-hour shifts at the post office to support us in the house, in the car. And so there was really no time for me to be nurtured. It was just like, all right, John, like you're on your own. And that turned into, just a lot of behavioral issues. I remember failing the 7th grade because I failed math and having to go to summer school. And then 8th grade, again, as a joke, I ran for student council president. And it started in the class and, somebody dared me to do it. Long story short, I was nominated and became a candidate against, I remember, Adam York. And I remember going to the lunchroom with a bunch of people behind me because I was asking, like, what are things y'all care about? And it was like, the lunch suck. And I remember taking a group of kids and, like, going at the lunch lady, like, this food is not good enough for us. Like, you got to get us better food. And the lady having a debate with me. And so we were equals at that point. And everybody was like, John, like, has the juice. And again, still as a joke, I remember winning and my principal, Ralph Thompson, like grabbing me, squeezing my hand and hugging me so tightly. And that's when I realized, and telling me how proud he was of me. And that's when I realized it was real and I needed to do different things because I had someone who believed in me who I didn't want to let down. But still got in trouble. High school, whenever I played football, that kept me out of trouble, even though I got kicked off the football team every year for behavior. By the time I made it to 11th grade, I was involved in gangs. And I remember, even though I was in a gang, I was still in honors English. I loved history, like I was taking, high level classes, but I also loved to fight. And I remember a friend being jumped in the auditorium and me, I go over there like I'm about to get everybody off. And before I realized it was 2, then it was 4, and then it was 8. And they were kicking my butt. And I remember running away. And at one point I stopped and I was like, I can't run. And so I ran back and jumped back in the fight, which helped my credibility in the streets. Like, okay, like he getting ganged by 8 people. They thought he was running away. And so it kept building up. And somebody gave me a gun and said, if they blank with you again, shoot them. And that story is crazy. That's why my spiritual faith is strong. I remember walking to school and I was ready to fight again because they had jumped me the day before. They called my house, told me they were going to kill me. And I got like 18 calls. And so having a gun, I walked into the school ready. And when I walked through the front door getting off the bus, I was met by a lot of friends from the gang like, all right, like, what we call, let's mob up to their wall and like, let's fight again. We ain't gonna get gang this time. And in my head, I'm like, shit, I got this gun. Like, I need to do something with it. And I remember Officer Gordon stopping me as we were walking and said, come here, G, let me talk to you. He was a school resource officer. And I was sweating bullets because I had this gun in my pants. And he brings me into his office and has me sit down. And I'm like, how does he know already? How does he know I got the gun? And I'm trying not to look nervous. And what he told me was like, hey, G, everything okay? Those people who jumped you, they ain't coming back to the school. So you don't have anything to worry about. And I remember a sigh of relief. And when he went to the other room, I took the gun out and took the bullets out and stuffed them into the seat because I was like, even if I get caught, I don't want to be caught with a loaded gun. put the gun in my locker, forgot about it. But one of my so-called friends ended up snitching on me and telling them I had the gun. And, they went to the locker. It wasn't my locker, but my schoolwork was in it. I was like, well, this has your name on it, this schoolwork. And they just said, you see this sign on the door that was like 7 years, $100,000 fine. It was like, this is going to be you if you don't go ahead and confess. I confessed, and they walked me out. Not funny at the time, but funny now. They put the shirt or a jacket over my handcuffs, like people didn't know what was going on. And I remember my other older brother, Don, coming to the school after it was over, like ready to fight, seeing me in the cuffs, making eye contact, shaking his head, and then he just turned around because it was a wrap, like I was going to jail.
Little John, is there anything you have always wanted to ask your dad? It doesn't have to be about what he's talked about today, but is there anything you've always wanted to know?
When you said your dad went to jail, what was the reason?
Your grandfather was like, again, like God rest his soul. He was like a petty thief, and he was like a hustler. And so he was breaking into things. He had this thing that he would do with money. So brilliant, right? He's so smart, but he used his brain ability for not the best things. And so I remember going around the country with my dad, like going into stores, and he had this money scheme where he would essentially give you $100 bill and ask for 5 20s. And before you can give him the 5 20s, he would say, no, give me 4 20s and 2 10s. Well, no, give me 4 20s, a 10 and 2 5s. And what he was doing while you have the money in your hand, he was confusing you. So as you put the money down, at one point he was taking the money back, but all you seen, you're confused, you're nervous, there's people behind you, you still seeing the same $100 on the table. And so you don't realize $100 is gone until they count your drawer at the end of the night. And that was like his hustle.
I'd love to hear, Little John, about your experience in school. You've heard your dad kind of talk about what his school days were like, and so I have kind of a two-part question for you. One is, what is your reaction to any of that, and how does it compare to what you experience in school today?
My reaction is some of the stuff I knew and some of the stuff I didn't know. And so I'm just processing some of the stuff that my dad said. And it's interesting. It's like a whole backstory. Like, I can make a whole book off it. It's I wouldn't say it's good to hear, but it's interesting to learn. But to compare what you had to go through and what I had to go through is that for my school, it's academically better, but the students there, it's what makes it worse. So I don't know anything lower than 4th grade, but 8th grade through mostly 6th grade, behavior issues has been something prominent. One example is one kid, 7th grade, there's this one kid with a disability, and people were making fun of him. There's one kid who stood up and just started laughing at him. And then there's this other kid who was trying to help the person with the disability. He was the one who got suspended for a day because they didn't know. And also another thing is fights are prominent. They're trying to start. The teachers, they're like losing their minds about trying to fix this. And the biggest thing right now, they're trying to figure out who did it, but someone put hand sanitizer in my teacher's drink because they don't like the teacher. And so, I don't want to compare it to you, but it's still an issue, like behavior issues.
Yeah, and and I laugh at this stuff because it's just different. Like I mean, with his school, when they talk about fights, like it's like a one-off, right? Like it's a big deal when a fight happens at his school. Yeah, but working in the district, I mean, it's like a fight every day. Like people bring guns to school. Kids are overdosing at school with drugs. People are serving cocaine and fentanyl, and so it's not funny, but it proves my point how if you don't have that experience, like the one of the things I wanted to do and we didn't get a chance for high school is to take a tour of the local school that's close to us. Let's call it Maplewood. And I wanted you to be able to walk around that school so you can see the key differences in what this school is, which is one of the lowest academically performing schools in the state with a lot of violence, versus where you could go at early college or with Montgomery Bell Academy. And so I think, at your current school, there are issues, there are things, but being on the school board, helping start a school, it has been one of the safest schools in the district. And so, but it's good that you can see it can still be better.
Right.
A question for both of you that kind of builds off of that, and that is, and I'm going to remind you to talk to
Yes.
each other. I know it's hard.
I know.
How, in what ways are schools today still segregated, or what legacies of segregation or desegregation do you see in schools today?
I guess I'll go first. But some levels of desegregation I see is the amount of diversity in my schools, especially 6th through 8th grade. There's like a lot of diversity, a lot of Hispanic, Black, white kids that go to my school. Much more Black people in 6th through 8, but in the lower grades, it's like more white people, but it's like still in general, it's more diverse. Not much well, I've heard a few accounts of segregation in my school, and a little bit of racism. Like earlier this year, around beginning of the school year last year, this one kid named Thaddeus, we were playing football and he dropped the ball, and since we're like it was an easy catch and he dropped it, and he caught my friend. He called him the hard R right in front of all of us, and we were all shocked by it, and we knew like we had like a gut feeling that he didn't like us, but we didn't know he would go that far. And he tried to blame it on it like just slipping out and just saying like you guys say it a lot around me, so it's like in my vocabulary. But we all knew he was lying because that's not a good excuse. And from what it seemed like, not much was done about it. I mean, we have this thing called the reset room. It's kind of like detention, but you go in there until like you're back ready for school. And he went in there for a few hours, came back out. He apologized to the person who said it, not really to the group, but from what it seemed like, not much was really done about it. Which was like, another thing that I heard was, I think I heard this about a month and a half ago, and it was, I think it was kindergarten, and some white kid, he was calling this Black girl like really mean things, and something that you shouldn't have to experience in kindergarten. And I was being told, I heard that not much was being done about it. Parents were speaking up, and still not much was done about it. And so I say this because I don't want to say segregation like should be a thing, but I think that separate but equal should be would be okay, as long as what happened, like separate but equal, is actually equal.
Yeah. Interesting take. I think segregation for me, even when I look at today, it's went from segregation in race, like Black, white, Latino, Asian, to now segregation based on like a class system, how much money your family has. And so if your family has money and education, right? Like the first thing parents do in our public school system is get the academic magnet schools, get the MEGs, the Martin Luther Kings, the Hume Fogg, the NSA. And what happens in the classism when parents don't have the ability to know what the good schools are, they send their kids to the neighborhood, to the zone schools. And what happens, you have desegregation because, well, Nashville is forever changing, but 10 years ago in the core, it was a lot of African American and poor families where they built the housing projects. And so after World War II, the white flight was America created the suburbs. And so a lot of families left the urban core, and the only thing that kept the urban core alive was subsidized housing. And so when you look at Nashville, you see James Casey out east, you see Preston Taylor out west, you see Joe Johnson out north, and then all the other projects in between, J.C. Napier, University Court. And you start to realize that, again, like if you have money in this country, you can make it. And if you don't make it. And when you don't make it, America is built on things like the prison system, right? Like I'm just now starting to get it as a 39-year-old that says, man, in America, African Americans are only 12 to 13% of the population, but make up 60 or 70% of the jail population. And so it almost eradicates a whole race. And then I go back from a novel or a book that I was reading where it talked about the Native American and how, the Trail of Tears. And we have part of the Trail of Tears came through Nashville where they were forced from their land. And I think in this new age, because a lot of poor people don't have money, we're being pushed out of our city. And so now it's like the transition, like now it's appropriate for us to go to the suburbs. And then wealthier people come back into the urban core. And so I think we are, history is repeating itself. And I think we have to, that's why I'm a big history buff, because I think we do have to understand the past so we won't repeat the future. And so your journey is like, I hope you have acknowledged that you have been in places with middle class and wealthy folks, but like in some camps, like you have been with people who live in poverty, because I always wanted you to know, this world is different, and to be able to navigate with the least of them and for people who are wealthy who may be leading this country in the near future. So I just hope that experience has helped you be able to navigate in any room, not feel less than or not feel better than, just being yourself.
Do you have any last words for your dad?
With that last part, with you saying that being able to go with middle class, higher class, and lower class people, I've definitely experienced that, especially at National Classical. I could experience it all when I'm going to MBA. I'm definitely experience the higher class, and with summer camps like the one I went to last year, and
The FISC camp.
right, FISC camp too. That was pretty fun, and backfield is like it gives me different perspective, and it teaches me like until I know someone's like what they're going through at home, I can't really judge them. Like some people I've seen that are in a gang, and then I see like where they come from, and there's not much choice that they have. Like one person told me that they had to be in a gang because if they didn't, well, they would have gotten shot or something like that. That's what they told me, and it makes me realize like the position I'm in now. I'm really lucky to not have to be in the position that most people are in right now. And it makes me think to always stay humble about who I am and where I come from.